a square yard, including guaranteed installation. The best of the Burlington look at guaranteed lowest prices during Dream Carpet's biggest broadloom blockbuster of the season. Dream Carpets, 815 Terminal Avenue, where builders buy.
Our pan feature's the one that adds to the fun. Pizza Hut, pizza to go. It's our pan pizza to go. It's scary as hell. Pizza Hut, pizza to go. Get that special baked in the pan taste of Pizza Hut pan pizza to go. Pizza Hut, pizza to go. Our pan pizza's as close as your phone, so bring it on home. Pizza Hut, pizza to go.
BCTV, we're giving it all we got.
Good morning. Another official investigation into another riot of the antiquated, outdated, molded old Ocala prison farm. And when I was reporting on that yesterday, I suddenly remembered that in downtown Vancouver is a brand new pretrial services centre. It's called Vancouver Pretrial Services Centre. So for the purposes of demonstration of how people should be treated when they're only accused and not convicted and are on remand, I went yesterday and had myself booked in at the Vancouver Pretrial Services Centre with the following results. What am I here for?
You're charged.
Oh, I better not be so aggressive.
Well, you're charged with section 361, 2 counts of it.
What is section 361?
I wish you hadn't asked. It's impersonation. Impersonation, 2 counts. You did use persistent and violent abuse of the English language on the 23rd of November, and on count 2, to personate an English person, as it states on the Form 8.
The maximum sentence for which has got to be life imprisonment in an English public school.
You've got that, yeah.
It's not all that funny, but I wanted and will demonstrate to you what happens if you are picked up in a court in Vancouver, Richmond, North Van, or West Van, and after your night in the bucket in the local jail, what happens to you as you come through the court procedure for bail or whatever else. Now, also on this morning program, I have the second book on the Mulroney victory. The first book was written by that little foreshortened columnist. I forget his name, Luke Man No Hands. The other book is Contenders, written by a fellow called Patrick Martin, who is some kind of a broadcaster somewhere, and of considerable interest to me, a fellow called Allan Gregg, who is the brains behind DECIMA Research, one of these evil pollsters who makes half a dozen phone calls and then drags the country or the province round by an opinion-based nose. So we'll see about the Tory Quest for power and the Contenders. What else am I doing this morning? Oh yeah, a monster comes to visit me. You'll see him later. What else am I going to do this morning? I'm going to plug, I want to sell more tickets for Black Light Magic, and don't you dare refuse to buy them. But I'm going to start with my Vancouver Pretrial Services Centre this morning, after the break. God, you couldn't do much like this, could you? Where am I now?
You're at the Vancouver Pretrial Services Centre.
And technically speaking, I've just appeared in court on remand on this particular charge, and you're going to take me somewhere.
Yes, we are. We're going to take you to the records receiving area.
And this is the routine.
Okay.
Yeah, short steps.
That's right, short steps.
Short steps. A very helpless feeling.
Order the one to control, over. Would you access BA02, over?
Walking slowly.
Can't do anything. Can't even lift my arm. That's secure. Careful now there, Webster. Where am I going?
Straight over this way. Right over here.
Over here.
Will you turn around, sir?
Turn around.
That's it.
That's it. Now what?
Over here.
Jesus, it's the most unpleasant experience, I must say.
We can remove all that stuff.
Pardon?
We can remove all the chains.
You can take them off now.
Yeah, everything comes
That's
off
because
now.
I've been searched, and I'm now in the admitting center.
That's correct.
Obviously, I should know the charge against me, but you have a warrant for me here of some kind.
That's correct.
Because I made my appearance in one of the Vancouver courts.
That is
And
correct.
now I'm coming here for what? A wait trial?
That's correct. Till tomorrow morning. $900.
Will I get a chance to raise bail?
Yep. You get a chance to make a couple of phone calls here?
A couple of phone calls.
Yeah.
I don't have to pay for the phone calls.
No, all free of charge.
I can phone the old lady, I can phone the lawyer.
Yeah, anybody you like.
And if I get no answer, can I keep phoning till I get them?
Yeah, we give you a good amount of time on there.
Well. Give me the name of this place again. Vancouver
Pre-trial Services Center.
Pre-Trial Services Center.
Correct.
And I'm coming here because I was in court in Vancouver yesterday. Can I sit down?
Mm-hmm.
These are most uncomfortable. Any idea what still stand any physical strain these chains, won't they?
Let's take a fair bit.
What am I here for?
You're charged.
Oh, I better not be so aggressive.
Well, you're charged with Section 361, 2 counts of it.
What is Section 361?
I wish you hadn't asked. It's impersonation. Impersonation, 2 counts. You did use persistent and violent abuse of the English language on the 23rd of November, and on count 2, to personate an English person, as it states on the Form 8.
The maximum sentence for which has got to be life imprisonment in an English public school.
You've got that, yeah.
Now, where is my friend, the chief officer here? Name again, please.
My name is Grant Stevens.
Grant Stevens. Now, this has been open how long, this place?
We've been open about 100 days.
100 days. Cost about what, $22 million?
Yes, that's right.
Now, obviously, I've been in the Pen, bad days and good days. I've been in Ocala, I've been in Alouette River. This is a vastly different kind of secure unit than I've ever seen in my life before. Who do you deal with here?
We deal with prisoners who are awaiting trial.
And only waiting trial.
That's right.
But supposing I'm in on a big drug conspiracy deal, I might be here for a year.
That's possible.
If I don't get bail, that is.
That's possible.
Now, do I come in, if I'm out in bail, do you control my activities or supervise my activities also from this place?
Not from this remand center, but from one of the other divisions within the Vancouver Pretrial Services Center.
Oh, I'm actually now in the kind of high-class remand area.
This is the secure part of the Vancouver
Secure
Pretrial
part.
Services. That's
but
right.
you have other pretrial services I'll learn about later.
Yes.
Now, is it possible for me to walk around without these frightening leg irons, and you can show me how your secure system works and what kind of facilities? Because are you going to call me with that Fink Webster, or are you going to give me a title? How will you treat me when I'm in here? I'm not yet convicted.
Well, we'd treat you just like any other prisoner. We'd call you Mr. Webster.
That's different.
Yes.
For a prison, isn't it?
Here, it's not unusual. It's just our way of managing prisoners.
In other words, you try and keep it. The people in here are not guilty, even if they have previous records.
That's right. They're here waiting trial, and they yet have not been sentenced.
And while you have full security, you treat them like human beings.
Of course.
Well, where should we go now, Mr. Stevens?
Okay, maybe the first place we should go is over here to where we take pictures of prisoners when they come in.
Okay, Mr. Stevens, routine, I must have my picture taken. This is for my CPIC identification, is it?
No, this is for our records here in the Vancouver Pretrial Services Center. When we take your picture, we'll go on to your prisoner file that we use here.
Okay, am I allowed to smile?
That would be unusual.
Okay, I won't smile.
Mr. Webster, this is Mr. Egan, the Director of Operations of the Vancouver Pretrial Services Center. He's going to show you around this part of the facility.
Next step, now that I've got these shackles off, when do I get my medical exam, technically speaking?
You would be going into that right now, Jack. In this area here is where our nurse is, and she would be examining you to ensure that you don't have any communicable diseases or any immediate medical problems, such as you may be on insulin or some drugs for heart or something else.
Do you really look after my problems? Supposing, for instance, I'm a single guy and my dog's locked in my apartment in the West End.
Well, those 2 phones that you saw on the wall when you came through are accessible to all prisoners who come into the building, and that is so you can make some of those calls.
All right, when are you going to get rid of my clothes?
We're going to do that right now.
Okay,
Just come
I'll
through
go
this way.
first. We're in here, and presumably I'm reasonably clean and...
Okay, what would happen now that you would be asked to remove all of your clothing and pass it through to an officer who works in our change room here.
Officer, one officer, please. And how'd you do?
How do you do, Mr.
My name's Jack Webster.
Hi, Ted Rutledge, Mr.
Thank goodness I'm only a pretend prisoner, Ted.
Yes.
Show me the kind of clothes I'd wear, the kind of jacket or shirt I'd have to put on. If you don't mind.
No.
Everybody wears green pants.
Green pants.
Same style.
Unshrinkable drill green pants. Have you got any on a 44 waist?
Yes.
You have.
Green shirt.
Green shirt.
Yeah.
And the usual.
Wool socks.
That's enough, that's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough. How often do I get changed if I'm stuck in here?
Initially here, and then in the living unit where you're.
Mind, I should be standing here naked having had my shower.
Yes.
And then you give me the clothes.
No, I have you put your clothes here.
My
We'll have a
clothes.
shower. Yeah, you can come back with the towel around
Can I
you.
keep my cigarettes?
You can keep your cigarettes and any papers that you require.
That's right, but nothing else.
No.
You keep the money and the wallet and
The money, the wallet, the jewelry, watch.
Fair enough. Now, Director of Operations Egan, where are we going to go?
Now I'm going to take you down into one of our interview rooms, Jack.
Okay.
Mr. Webster, I'd like to now give you the information that's given to all prisoners admitted to the center, correctional center rules and regulations, which pertain to all prisoners housed in provincial institutions in this province. Also, the provincial information for inmates, which outlines things such as visiting rights and your rights and responsibilities
Oh,
while you're
I
in
can
here.
have visitors here at the center while I'm awaiting trial.
Yes, you can. You have unlimited access to visitors.
Unlimited access to visitors.
And this is the prisoner information guide, which pertains to this center particularly. That tells you how to get in touch with doctors, the chaplain if you wish to see him, what the visiting hours are.
This is a different kind of remand unit, is it not?
Yes, it is, Mr. Webster.
Very different.
Well, our attitude here is that all that's happened to you to this point is that somebody has accused you of committing an offense, and you've yet to be dealt with by the courts. So as far as we're concerned, you're an accused person, and the only rights that we take from you are those that the courts dictate that we have to take, and those that are implied just by your being in the center and the security measures we require to keep you here.
Thank you, Mr. Egan.
Can I get an elevator to go to visit tomorrow? Stand by. Thank you.
Control. Now, Mr. Stevens, where are you taking me now?
Now, I'm going to take you up through this corridor, and I'm going to take you over to our control center.
Am I now in a secure envelope?
That's
Even if
right.
could I be unescorted now?
Yes, you could be if you were not a maximum security prisoner.
Well, I ain't. I promise you I'm not. Okay. We're now going back up as if I were going to a cell.
That's right. Control portal 1 over.
Now, technically, I'm on my way to a cell. But first of all, I want you to take me into your control center because this is a very different kettle of fish. I haven't seen one key yet, really.
Okay, let's go in there.
Let's go ahead.
Control portal 1 over.
Control portal 1 over.
Would you access BC01, please?
BC01, this is it.
This is BC01.
Every door's got a number.
That's right.
Can I now say, can you access, please, BC03?
No.
Come in, please. We can shut this
Control portal 1 over.
You gotta come in
door.
and
Come in,
talk.
please. We gotta close this door first.
Oh, I see. You can never have two doors open at one time.
That's right, Mr. Webster. Control, would you access BC03?
When? We're in the control center. Now, how many television monitors have we got?
We have 27 television cameras throughout the building and 12 monitors that can be switched to any one of those cameras.
Now, as I understand it, you've got a secure outer perimeter, and then you've got these envelope units within them.
That's right.
Does that give the accused on remand any more freedom than he would have in a normal holding place for a trial?
It does give him some more mobility, whereby he can move from one area to another with no escort. But he is under surveillance by the television cameras and monitors here in control.
Have you any idea how many movements a day these chaps make of gates and doors?
I think something in the neighborhood of about 1,500 movements in a shift.
How many people will you have in here at any given time?
We could have up to 163 prisoners.
But they're rolling over. They will come and go. They'll go out and bail.
That's right.
Or they may go back. Supposing I get sentenced to pen and I'm waiting on appeal, do I stay here for my appeal time for the pen?
You can, or you can go out to the penitentiary.
Yeah, the only other thing being that you only handle, in this new type of remand bail provision, what do you call it? Prison Services Center.
This is the Vancouver Pretrial Services.
Pretrial Services
That's right.
Center. And you only handle the Vancouver courts?
Yes, we handle some Richmond courts, some Burnaby courts, some North Vancouver courts, and Squamish courts.
Now, from a point of view of security, is there any way, I mean, you're not likely to have much trouble in a remand center, any way that anyone can control and open gates without anybody's knowledge? I mean, unauthorizedly?
No, all doors are monitored here. All doors are accessed, closed, and opened here.
So while it looks quite nice and smooth, it's still a very secure place.
It is.
But your guards don't have to waste all their days carrying a bunch of keys going back and forward like automatons.
That's right, exactly.
Good. Now,
precisely.
Will you kindly put me in jail for my next appearance in court, which is tomorrow?
Okay, come with me.
Thank you. Can't open it. Can I open it?
Yes.
Okay, which floor is my accommodation on?
We're going to the 5th floor. No.
5th floor. Well, this is me headed. Oh, I'm now in a living unit. I would be in a living unit like this. How many other prisoners, Mr. Stevens?
In here, there would be 14 altogether.
14. None of us is convicted.
That's right.
We've got our television set there. It looks very neat and clean.
This is the leisure area.
Yes. And we're not showing any prisoners for the very obvious reason that these people in here are only accused of crimes, and we don't want any accidental identification.
That's right.
My cell, please.
Right this way. Go into 02. This would be your cell.
This is 02. This is my cell. Well, tell me something. I'm supposed to have stopped smoking, but I'm in a bit of a state of shock. Can I smoke in my cell?
Yes, you can. Yes, as you can see.
If I have any.
Oh, yes, if you smoke, you would be allowed to keep your tobacco products and smoke.
I've got my bed.
That's it.
Well, let's
That's a heavy spring underneath.
It sure is a heavy spring underneath. I've got my toilet. I've got my fresh air, kind of.
That's right.
And I've got my toilet, my wash hand basin.
And a clothes closet.
But if I want a shower in the morning, can I get one?
Yes, just outside and down the hallway about 10 or 15 feet.
And I'm in a secure envelope. I can go and get that myself.
Yes, you can.
That's not bad. Now, if you'll switch off that camera, I'll have a quick smoke. Yeah, I must say they're not bad-looking cells. What did you say about the United Nations requirements?
Well, this here cell suits and complies with all of the United Nations requirements for holding prisoners.
All right, I'm going to give you a test. I feel unjustly accused. I can't get the lawyer I want. They've refused me legal aid, and I'm really angry. I'm going to smash up this place.
This is made of stainless steel. That's that mirror. This here is made of Lexan. It's not breakable.
You know, I've got a fair heft in my fist yet. And you can't break it.
Yes.
I could smash the toilet.
Oh, for sure you can.
But you don't have any trouble here because of why?
Because we're trying to present a normalized environment here.
Mr. Webster.
Mr. Webster, that's right. So
Mr. Stevens.
That's right.
Please and thank you.
Of course.
And it works.
It sure does.
Gee, thanks very much. Mr. Stevens.
Okay, Mr. Webster.
Well, we can't do a full tour in an afternoon, but we just wanted to have a glance at There aren't many remand units where you've got weightlifting and a big gym like this, are there?
No, this is probably one of the most modern gyms and prisons in the province.
So apart from, I can work out when I want to?
Pretty well, yes.
Yeah, this is part of the secure envelope in here, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Must be escorted to here, must I?
Not necessarily, no. If you're not a maximum security prisoner, you could come down unescorted.
Because I can be identified on the television and given the pass from envelope to envelope to envelope.
That's right.
Okay, and upstairs what have I got? We passed by a library.
And a barber shop.
Barber shop.
And also an office where the clergy...
a minister if I want one.
Provide service, and a commissary.
How about any legal advice, legal services?
Yes, legal services are provided by the Legal Services Society and also the Salvation Army.
Right. Okay, we've done a little bit of a tour. We're going to finish up by having a word with Mr. Hagman. Bob Hagman, isn't it? Yes. The title, please?
He's the district director of the Vancouver
District Director of the Vancouver Pretrial Service Center.
You got it right.
I'll never get that name
right. 1 on 10's good. There's the one on 9. No. Bring up the one on 11 if you can.
To which? What picture do you want?
The other one, the other camera's going to pick them up on now.
Control.
Stand by.
You want me to get it?
Yeah, hold it.
R.J. Hagman is the director of the Vancouver Pretrial Services Center. I thought, you know, well, first time in here. How long have you been operating now?
With prisoners since August the 2nd.
That's about 100 days.
Yes.
This must be the most sophisticated control area for prisoners awaiting trial in this country.
Probably in North America.
In North America. Because you do more than just hold prisoners, don't you? What other services are available here for prisoners who are passing through? Accused, I should say, who are passing through.
Mostly we offer bail supervision services, and for those who are subsequently found guilty and there's a request for information which will help the court in sentencing, then we develop pre-sentence reports for the court as well.
So you do bail supervision, and if I'm in here, my bail's been set, will you help me? Can I have all the facilities I want to try and get my bail?
Yes.
And if I've been sentenced, will the probation officers interview me here?
Yes.
Whether I'm in custody or not at that particular time?
Yes.
Now, what was the concept of this place? Because, as I say, it's totally unlike any other remand center I've ever been in, which is usually just the wing of a jail.
Well, the concept, there's several concepts that were built into this facility. First of all, to bring all correctional pretrial services under one roof.
Which you've done here.
Which we've done here. To put it in close proximity to the user courts to which it serves, and we've done that. We're right adjoining, as you know, the provincial court, and we're handy to the higher courts. And then to build a facility that protects the community, that is safe for the prisoners that are here, that we're charged to hold, that's not a bad place for staff to come to work, given it as a jail, and that does not produce stress in the prisoners.
Well, there's bound to be some stress in the prisoners, but what, for instance, would be less stress here, apart from the obvious reasonable accommodation they have? They've got the radios, they've got the services, they've got the gym, they've got their activities, and do they have unlimited access to telephones, more or less, do they?
Yes, they do.
That really
and also very liberal visiting.
Liberal visiting?
Yes.
And if I'm worried about my wife early in the morning, I can get up and phone her if I want to?
Yes, you can.
And therefore my freedom is electronically restricted, but I have more freedom than I normally would in an ordinary remand jail, right?
Yes.
100 days. What would you do, though? I mean, I'm very impressed with your security, but what would you do in the case of a big fire?
Evacuate.
I mean, one button, open doors, everybody out?
No, evacuate. The place is built to all of the strictest fire codes, and probably British Columbia has some of the strictest in the whole North American continent. And we meet all that. The place is built with all its fire separations and everything else. We can evacuate in mass, or we can evacuate piecemeal.
Area by area.
And very controlled, yes.
Well, this must have taken a lot of weight off the older Cala system.
Yes, 150.
150. But how many more like this do we need, say, in British Columbia?
Remand facilities?
If we had enough money.
One more. One more remand, and about 3 more sentenced.
I have taken off my leg irons and my chains. I'll give you back your badge. Say I was very impressed. Thank you very much indeed. And I hope I'm only here socially.
My pleasure.
Thanks very much, Mr. Head.
Okay.
No matter how pleasant that place is, no matter how reasonable the cells are compared to anywhere else in our prison system, it's still a jail for those who are accused. But it seems to run pretty well, operating 100 days. And once you're in there, you are Mr. Webster or Mr. Joe Doe. There are no women in that particular establishment. There are, of course, some on the staff. Anyway, that's the kind of thing that would prevent the capers we have out at dear old disgusting Ocala. Now, I hate to tell you, but there's another book out about Mulroney and the rest of these Tories. Matter of fact, Mulroney's going to be in town at this weekend, but in view of the fact that he hasn't made any policies of any kind yet, he is not available for any searching questioning or even friendly questioning really by the media. He's just in to perform at the Grey Cup and to a fundraising dinner. But the book I'm going to tell you about is The Tory Quest for Power Contenders, with Allan, Gregg, DECIMA Research, Why Don't I Like Pollsters, and Patrick Martin, wouldn't you Sunday morning radio? That's the last mention of that. After the break. This is a book which is vastly different from Fotheringham's book on the same topic. You know, Look More No Hands was his, and this is Contenders, The Tory Quest for Power. For instance, it disposes of Clark's round-the-world trip without a single mention of his lost underwear. I think the only reference to Joe's particular mental acuity is his question somewhere, I think it was in India, what is the totality of your land? Patrick Martin, I'll come to you first. Did you set out to write a kindly book about this or an analytical book in cooperation with our pollster friend here and somebody called Perlin?
George Perlin.
George Perlin.
Political scientist at Queen's. Oh, we didn't want to be kind to anybody, no, Jack, and I don't think we are. I think we're very fair to everyone. We wanted to analyze what it means to be a party in opposition. And a leadership convention provides a good opportunity because there everything's exposed. You know, the people bear all of their past offenses as they expose each other, and the people are most approachable, most reachable. You also get to grips with the people in the party, and that's what Allan did.
You have political convictions, even though you, I presume, as a DECIMA Research, are totally non-partisan in your polling.
In the findings.
All right, what are your own political convictions?
Personally?
Yeah.
That I'm a professional public opinion pollster. My job is to work for clients in order to get them elected.
All right, did you tell in advance by your polls that Mulroney was going to win this?
No, again, that leadership conventions aren't the kind of thing that public opinion polling per se is particularly appropriate for.
Do you work for Bennett?
I've done work for him.
What kind of work have you done for Bennett?
Nothing that relates to the book at all.
Hey, but still tell me, what kind of work have you done for Bennett?
You'll have to get me back on another show.
You won't tell me what you did for Bennett.
Well, we do things.
Do you work for the Social Credit Party or do you work for the British Columbia government?
Well, from time to time we've worked for both.
You get paid by the Social Credit Party sometimes, and sometimes you get paid by the British Columbia government.
From time to time.
All right, now. Who was the biggest idiot at the convention in terms of candidates? I shouldn't say that. Rephrase the question.
Yeah.
Apart from that fellow who was on about metric, who were the candidates who wasted their money, which your book shows how easily they wasted their money?
I think Michael Wilson probably had the worst performance per dollar of all the candidates. Yeah. Michael Wilson expected to get about 300 votes. But that's not to say he's any less of a proper leadership candidate. He was a good man. But he was playing minor league ball in a big league park, and he just couldn't handle it with an organization that the others had.
What about Paul Clinton?
Well, we've got within the book. I mean, really, all of the contenders who weren't in the top three did dismally. I mean, I think 13% was the total vote that those 5 individuals collectively got together. And the point is that they're not, idiots or men of less than substance, is that they just didn't really understand the nature of party politics and how it had changed so dramatically.
Pocklington made a contribution, though, beyond the number of votes he got. He got 102 votes on that first ballot. But he gave a sense of feeling to the convention that none of the other candidates really did. There are people in that party who didn't vote for him, but still thought that he expressed a viewpoint that they could agree with. They wouldn't vote for him as leader because it's not as simple as that, but they welcomed his candidacy for that reason. So I think he got a good return for his money.
Is it not a tradition in Canada, however, that if you want to be, even if you know you can't become the leader, that you must establish your base so that at least you get a if you have a strong enough base, you get a strong position in the cabinet if your party is elected.
Yeah, I think a lot of people run for position in this instance. I think at the end, towards the end, there were a lot of them who were running for position. At the start, I think they all thought they could win.
Crombie, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
He never thought for a moment he could win.
No, he did.
He?
He did think he could. He was playing the Joe Clark scenario. As Clark won in '76 by coming up the middle as the third man, he thought he could appeal to the broadest number of people. But he made terrible mistakes in his organization, which also was shabby. Now, he didn't spend as much money as Mike Wilson or some of the other candidates, and so he didn't get burned as badly. But yeah, he really thought he could win all
All
along.
right, gentlemen, give me your interpretation of that final drama which I witnessed from a sweaty booth as a panelist for CTV, when we came down to that incredible situation whereby, as I recall, Clark's position in relation to Mulroney at the very last moment, when people were suggesting that that Cosby go to Clark. What happened then? Tell me the scenario of the final triangular breakdown.
Well, there had been a lot of pressure from Crosby people and Clark people, and they were meeting in a room underneath the stadium. The Crosby people believed that, in fact, they were the only ones who could beat Mulroney, because among the Clark people, they thought there were a large number of real closet Crosby supporters. And they asked Clark, in fact, to come over. They asked his people to come over. And in a secret meeting they had in the room down there, they put it to Lowell Murray. Murray, of course, on Clark's behalf, refused. At the same time, the Clark people said, no, you come over. But for Crosby, he had decided ages ago that he'd never endorse either of them. And I think it's fair to say that it's impossible to predict how the Clark people would have broken, but there were a large number of Crosby supporters in that Clark camp.
Would you have thought it reasonable at all, though, that Clark, as the former Prime Minister and the leader with those substantial votes, which I forget offhand, could possibly have gone to anybody at that stage, the latter stage of the convention?
No, it's one of the biggest pieces of nonsense that surrounds the mythology of the convention. I mean, it's nonsense on stilts. Why would he? He was running for one reason, and one reason alone, is that he believed that he was the man for the job, and that the trials and tribulations that he had gone through came with the job, and if anything, he was best able to cope with them. To assume that he personally would choose, a Crosby over a Mulroney is to not understand Joe Clark first and foremostly, and further to assume that he would take the responsibility for the conclusion that the convention would reach, again, is not to understand Joe Clark.
He's a Democrat. He wanted the party to work the whole thing out. That's why the convention was called. That's why he wouldn't call a preemptive convention before the Winnipeg Convention forced him into it. He wanted the party to work out its problems himself.
I suppose when the final histories are written, perhaps you deal with this in here too, is why the name of Devil at Winnipeg, he just doesn't say, I've got my mandate, no leadership convention. Can you explain that to me?
Well, I think what's happened, we try in the book at great length to explain this, is that he had gone through at least a 2-year period, arguably his entire leadership, consumed with the issue of his leadership. And he realized, 66.9% or not voting against review, he could not continue governing, that he could not continue leading his caucus, fully half of whom were voting against him, that is for review. He could not control his national executive, which by that time had been full of people who were out to remove his
That's the key.
That's the more important figure.
Yeah.
67% in Winnipeg, but only 50%, maybe not even a majority of caucus. And that was the real democratic process there, because that's his visible front. That's what he seemed to be leading all the time. And when you don't have a majority of your caucus behind you, you're not seen to have a majority of your party.
You're dead.
I'm afraid so. His own advisor, Finlay MacDonald, sent him a memo, which we include in Contenders, almost a year before, saying it's only going to get worse. Call the convention now. Use the opportunity you have, the organization you've got. Call the convention before they force you into it, and then you've got a chance. He wouldn't do it.
Was it his pride that prevented him from taking Lowell Murray's advice, do you think?
No, I don't think it was pride. It was, again, his particular appreciation of what the Progressive Conservative Party is all about, and that it is a party in opposition, literally perpetually for modern history. It's a party that is center and right of center ideologically, and therefore has to accommodate everyone on that side of the spectrum, and as a consequence, it's a very, very difficult party to lead. And we, again, the point is made is that Joe Clark had almost ceased to become a person for a lot of those delegates. He became the symbol. That is the politics of opposition. Acrimony, always losing.
Is it, as I kind of feel sometimes, a real personal tragedy?
In a sense it was, because Clark had the right answer for the Tory success story. You win in Quebec, you win among the ethnic voters, among women and among youth. You broaden the pond in which the Tories fish and you got a chance.
But he's not half as good as Mulroney will be in terms of Quebec support.
It's not entirely clear that's true, because the constituencies are different.
Yeah, again, that Joe Clark had built a real constituency in the province of Quebec that the party had never enjoyed before.
Listen, one question, personal. You're a famous pollster. How old are you?
I never tell.
26?
Much younger than anyone else sitting at the table.
28?
Young, very young.
Are you 30 yet?
No.
Good. More with Allan, Gregg, and Patrick Martin after the break. Okay, a little bit of gossip. I thought Crosby's remark, his first remark round about the fact that 6 or 7 million people who speak French can't necessarily demand to have a bilingual in charge of this country, that wasn't such a bad remark, was it?
It's entirely reasonable for a man, of course, who's unilingual.
But why did it go so sour? I mean, it's not illogical that a brilliant unilingual politician should not necessarily be denied the leadership of this country.
And an awful lot of people, even in the province of Quebec, thought that. A lot of editorialists were writing that too. The problem with John Crosby, though, was not that he couldn't speak French. The problem was that he stumbled, and he stumbled badly under pressure. When in Longueuil, Quebec, they asked him for the 1,000th time, how do you relate to the people in Quebec? And he blew his top. I mean, he talked about the Chinese and the Germans, and they went back and wrote their headlines that French means no more than Chinese or German to John Crosby. He lost his temper, he stumbled, and the Tory delegates walked away from him for that reason. They didn't want another stumbler.
Did he show another character defect when he had attacked Maureen McTeer? Not character defect, lack of judgment, I mean.
Oh, I think if he was sitting here, he'd answer yes. I think he felt that was imprudent and that he shouldn't have ever said it.
All right, now tell me, apart from the juggling at the end, why did Mulroney win?
Well, the claim that we make is that he understood party politics as well as Joe Clark. He understood the changing nature of party politics as well as Joe Clark. Only those two really understood that. And in the final analysis, he understood the Progressive Conservative Party and the Progressive Conservative delegate better than anyone else, and that his campaign and everything he did reflected that throughout.
He even reflected them personally. I mean, the Tory delegates, by and large, came from more humble origins. They now lived in the cities. They were personal success stories. You know, their mean average income was $40,000 a year. He was just like them, the humble beginnings in Baie-Comeau, and now a success story in his personal life. I mean, that was it. He was one of them, and exactly what they wanted to be, and he hadn't lost in politics.
Is he a man of demonstrable philosophy and conservative principles?
No, but I think that he certainly is far, far, far more professional and studied and astute than a lot of the people who look at an absence of any kind of electoral record and say this fellow is a neophyte.
Oh no, his first performance in the House of Commons when he was sparring with Trudeau that brilliant day on both their parts was magnificent theatre, and warm, wasn't it?
Well, we look, and I think in a fairly positive way, at not only his speeches and his performance on the road, but also his Where I Stand book. And there what he was able to do, and again I think it shows real skill, he was able to attach himself to the symbols of the right that the PC party was attaching itself to without having to deal with or accept any of the specific public policy outputs.
He also had to overcome an enormous obstacle, and he did it very well. And that was the distrust in which he was held by many within his party. Because for 7 years he really had been running nonstop for the leadership of that party. We show in our book a confidential memorandum that was presented to him during the campaign, which says this is the biggest thing you've got to overcome. His own people said the distrust. They don't know where you stand. They don't know who's behind you. And because he was seen to be an available contender for Clark's job all through those years, it was thought that he was responsible for Clark's downfall to some extent. He overcame that distrust by a personal, contrite campaign, rec room to rec room to rec room around the country. Overcoming that was terrific for him.
Who was it brought in the 9-year-olds and the drunks?
Well,
I mean, that's one of the most...
There were some excesses in both their camps.
Clark wouldn't tolerate that knowingly, would he?
Neither men tolerated it knowingly. It was excesses of the organizers in the province of
Quebec. And one
Quebec.
expects it in the province of Quebec, doesn't it?
Well, that's unfair to categorize it just that way. I think it happens in different parts of the country. Maritime politics are known to have different things.
We haven't voted dead men here since 1949. I can state that almost without fear of contradiction.
I wouldn't like to say it's only in the province of Quebec that
but
you
it's
have
worse
such
than the
excesses.
province of Quebec.
Well, you may know that.
No. I read my
certainly have
Globe and Mail.
examples of
I
it.
see more capers out of Quebec, apart from things in Montreal. I'm thinking about
maybe
Mr.
it's because
Mackesy, who has been cleared so brilliantly. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful?
Maybe it's because they take politics so seriously. It's very important. They fight it.
You wrote a book, Where I Stand?
No, this is Brian Mulroney's book, Where
That's
I Stand.
he wrote a book?
Yes.
I haven't read it. Where does he stand?
It's a collection of speeches, mostly on productivity and labor negotiations.
That's
and
right,
principles.
labor relations and productivity and good Canadians and national unity and nothing about Medicare.
It's very simple, it's very straightforward, but the beauty of it is, as Allan says, it's exactly what the Tory delegates wanted to hear.
Yeah. Will he be a good Prime Minister?
I think he's got all the credentials to be a very good Prime Minister. That the real challenge in leadership politics in this country is to broker all the diverse, elements in the country. He's getting a lot of practice trying to broker the most diverse elements in the country as they're personified in the Progressive Conservative Party.
And Miller's delightful. Piknovich, am I right?
Yes. Yeah.
Mila Piknovich. You've got to have that kind of wife to be a successful Prime Minister. Well, no, you don't. I'm just going back through Prime Minister's wives. Wives don't really matter in this country, do they?
No, but they can be a political asset.
They can be a help.
Especially within a political party, within the internal party organization.
Well, you're a couple of bright boys. 19 years of age, what are you, 50?
Yes, terribly, terribly ancient.
No, you're not. Patrick Martin, Allan Gregg, Contenders, the Tory Quest for Power. I don't know that we've even thought about the Tories or the rest of the country in the past 6 weeks, for obvious reasons.
They still exist over the mountains.
Oh, I don't know. We certainly haven't gone into pains of praise for Trudeau's peace march around the world. But talk to these two gentlemen, both independent, non-political thinkers. Is that correct? After the break. Oh. Polling.
Yes.
I don't understand polling. When you do a poll, and I'm the client, right? I come to you and I say, Mr. Gregg, I'm planning to have an election in the spring of next year. And it's now, we'll say, the summer of the year before.
Okay.
How many sets of polls would you have to run for me to get a feeling, and how would you organize the questions?
What you do first is you develop what they call a baseline data set. That is that you'd go in and you'd probe attitudes across a range of subject materials, issues, personalities, assessment of government performance, assessment of the opposition candidates.
I've never been polled. Like, who do you find the most attractive political leader in the country?
That would be the kind of question you would ask.
Are you happy with the present level of medical services delivered by the government?
That kind of question, yes.
Do you think we should have tougher labor laws?
Yep.
Or looser labor laws? That kind of thing.
Yep.
On each poll in a province, how many people would you talk to, and how do you contact them?
It depends really what level you want to analyze the data at. If you're just interested in province-wide figures in province of British Columbia, for example, in a break of the lower mainland versus the interior and the coast region, you could get by with 500. You draw them on a random probability basis. That is, every adult has the same likelihood of being included in your sample.
And that random probability basis is a provable mathematical formula.
Sure, it's like flipping a coin. If you flip a coin, what's your chance of getting ahead? 50%.
50%.
It's random probability, exactly the same notion. And then you look at the people that you have sampled, and you look at how well they fit, how well they are the same as the total universe from which the sample is drawn, and then you know what your area is.
You've got to put your sample into various categories, have you not? Young men, young women, middle-aged?
They fall into that quite naturally. If 5% of the lower mainland population is Chinese, that they have a 5% probability of being part of the sample you draw, and that you get those various quotas or strata.
How do you pick the names?
Usually what we do is that we computerize all the telephone directories, and we just put in an equation, and the names just pop right out.
They pop right out, and you take those?
Yep.
Because anything short of that would be, wouldn't give you the proper sample.
That's right. It would be like putting the bubble gum on.
And do you want to talk to these two guys about the Tory leadership, the Contenders? Go ahead, please. Hello. Where are you? I told you there was something wrong with the phones this morning. Are you there? Hold on, please. Go ahead now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious if you detected at the convention any animosity between Joe Clark and John Crosby due to the fact that Crosby was a prominent minister in the Clark administration and was virtually one of the first to renounce Clark. Did you detect, was there any animosity involved in Clark releasing his delegates instead of going to Crosby's side?
I don't think it had to do, Jack, or to the caller, I don't think it had to do really with the the record of John Crosbie and the Clark government, the fact that there was animosity between the two men. There was concern on Joe Clark's part, though, because of the direction that John Crosbie might take the party on the issue of unilingualism, bilingualism. He told me in an interview we did during the course of the campaign, he thought he saw the ghost of George Drew welling up in John Crosbie, and he was concerned that the people around him, even if Crosbie himself were sensitive to the issue, might expect him to take the party back into a much more pro-Anglo position. I don't think Crosbie was that way. I think he was insensitive and unable to handle the issues of that rose there, but Joe Clark was concerned that people around him might be following him for that very reason.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
In lieu of the fact that you feel that Brian Mulroney will try to establish a broad, or should I say broader, base and constituency, do you feel that Brian Mulroney will probably support a provincial PC party?
In the province of British Columbia?
Yeah, good question.
That is a good question, and has been an issue and a problem for the Federal Progressive Conservative Party for years and years and years. I mean, one of the things we do find in our polls is that the province of BC is far more volatile politically than any other province in the country, that the votes shift all over the place, and they shift all over the place because there's no symmetry between federal and provincial parties. Having said that, the Federal Progressive Conservative Party has a good working relationship with the Socreds here, and I doubt if you'd see any initiative short-term in that regard.
Can I just add to that, caller, though, that...
Go on.
Can I just add to that, caller, that the past, in the past, Brian Mulroney had told me, and I'm sure he told many other people, that in the province of Quebec, he thought it was absolutely essential to support a provincial Tory party there. He believed that that was one of the reasons why they had failed to succeed in the province. So if that's any indication, you may see it elsewhere.
Well, you go back to the old Diefenbaker days when I remember interviewing they called him his Quebec lieutenant, I forget his name now, many years ago.
Wasn't it?
Bolsay.
Yes.
Bolsay. Leon Bolsay.
Leon Bolsay, and another one before him, too.
Sevigny, you're thinking of?
No. And there was absolutely no provincial organization in Quebec, really, when Diefenbaker ran, but he got votes, didn't he?
Well, they borrowed the Union Nationaliste support there.
Oh, that was it.
That's it. UN came out for them.
Good. Where am I going? Can't see. Go ahead, please.
Gentlemen, would you have a best educated guess as to whose work brought the Tories up to an all-time peak in popularity, whether it would be Mr. Clark's work or Mr. Brian Mulroney's?
There's a third answer.
Yeah, some would say Mr. Trudeau. There's no question that I think first and foremostly that Brian Mulroney has inherited an unprecedented electoral opportunity, and that in no small measure was a function of Joe Clark's work at broadening the party base.
Telling it how it is, gentlemen.
I'm sorry?
Pardon? What did you say?
I said thank you for telling it how it is.
Thank you. He must be a Clark man. It was at 60%, wasn't it?
Well, 49% when the leadership convention
but
was
recently,
actually
wasn't
called.
it at 60?
62.
62.
Yes,
60. It's impossible to lose an election on 62.
It's already back to 55, and it'll undoubtedly close before the next one.
What do you need to win an election in terms of polling support?
Well, again, the historical theory has been is that if the PC party was within 8 points, that is, you can be 8 points behind the Liberals, given how skewed the votes are by region, they could win an election. I believe that the Liberals can't win unless they're ahead in the polls, that if they're even tied going into the next election, they won't win.
So the Liberals would have to be. The Tories could be 8 points behind because of this distribution, but the Liberals would have to be at least a little bit ahead.
Yes.
Incredible situation in Canada today. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Jack, gentlemen. I'd like to tie into an old proverb which is often overused, which refers to us not voting in new governments but throwing out old ones. I was kind of sorry to see Joe Clark lose in a thing back then, basically because I think we're going to be going the same direction that we went in 1968. Pierre Elliott Trudeau was elected primarily out of charisma, secondarily in regards to issues, and you pointed out at the beginning of the program, what has Mr. Mulroney said? All I know is I hope we learn from history. I hope we learn that we've got to be more educated. We've got to understand issues. We've got to understand platforms and what people have got to say about these issues. While Joe Clark was not exactly the most charismatic man in Canadian politics, I think he was a man that at least had integrity and displayed issues. No
doubt about that. And you disagree?
No, and your caller raises an interesting point, of course, that you're not going to win an election in this country on policies. You're going to win it on issues. And as long as the issue is the government in power, Mr. Mulroney has the golden opportunity. He is being persuaded, he is being pushed and cajoled into coming out with specific policies. He's trying to avoid that, trying to be all things to all people.
Okay.
But his own people in the party, this is the problem he faces, will eventually force him into positions, because these are Tories after all. These are ornery, independent-minded, policy-oriented people who will expect him to take a stand.
One more short segment with Messrs. Gregg and Martin after the break. A couple of the appendices to your book are fascinating.
Scared off by your organization, and they don't trust you.
Yeah, difficult, you know. It's so slick, so handsome, so wealthy, so successful. I don't think of him as a boy from Baie-Comeau. I think of him as one of the Tory financial establishment. I wonder how many people think of that.
But again, I think the really interesting thing, the more telling thing about Brian Mulroney is how carefully and deliberately he went after those problems. And instead of doing Lear jets around the country and Conrad Black in tow, he went rec room to rec room and ate potato chips and cheap wine with the delegates from Caracat, and he addressed those issues.
He did a John Monroe in hiding his cigarettes.
Sure.
John Monroe. He's still smoking, of course. Go ahead from Victoria.
Hello. Gentlemen, do you not think that Maureen McTeer unconsciously did Clark a little harm, inasmuch as that she didn't use his name? I can understand a woman professionally using her name as Dr. Jones or something else, but a lot of the old-time people kind of got their back up the fact that he didn't persuade her to use his name.
Good point. If she'd been Mrs. Clark all the way through, would that have...
Would he be Prime Minister today?
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
No, but it raises a much larger issue than the Maureen McTeer issue, and it's the Tory conundrum, is that the people that would upset most would be the rank and file of the PC party, the delegates who were at this meeting. Yet, the Ms. McTeer and what she puts forward to a larger electorate is very, very appealing, and is part of a constituency that the Tory party has never appealed to, but has to win.
Clark had terrific support among women in the party, and it was women who were being drawn to the Tory party because of him.
Paul River, go ahead, please.
Yes, can the gentleman explain why the NDP has been suffering the erosion of popular support, or do you think it would be the realization that the NDP is basically irrelevant at the federal level?
No, I think you've touched on it. It sounds very flip and even partisan. Their problem is relevancy. What you see is a public that's seen as problems grow worse, continues to see that they're solvable, and so putting a greater and greater premium on problem solvers. Who can solve these problems? The NDP have quite a good image in terms of being concerned and for the little guy, but no image in terms of governing.
And they've got a fantastic popular vote for a very small number of seats.
That's right. So they are. They're just not in the game right now.
They'll never make it. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. If I may, I would like to tap into the feelings of these two gentlemen. I've been a conservative for many, many years, but I have a very uneasy feeling since Mr. Mulroney was elected. I no longer feel confident somehow to, without question, pass my vote conservative. He seems too smooth, almost arrogant. And I'm wondering if this is the feeling that these gentlemen get from other voters. I'm almost afraid that Mr. Trudeau perhaps would be elected on charisma. Heaven help us if that will happen again.
Okay, ma'am, these are good fears. What do you think of them, gentlemen?
Well, it's a feeling that many people in the Tory party shared before the convention, of course, and it's a feeling that people obviously in the country feel. It might not surprise our listeners, our viewers here, that 20% of the Tory delegates said they would never vote for Joe Clark in the convention, but 21% said they would never vote for Brian Mulroney. And most of those people based it on a matter of distrust for those very reasons that this viewer raises.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, we're just interested in knowing what the worst case error is when you do your estimates of the population.
Oh, the worst case is that none of it means anything. When they talk 19 out of 20 times, where they say plus or minus 4%, 19 out of 20 times, the assumption is that 1 out of 20, you're looking at nothing. It isn't a random probability sample. It's just junk, and you should throw it out.
Give me that again. I just didn't understand the word either of you said. Worst case error.
Well, the question is that in doing polling, what's the worst error that is inherent in the poll you've done? And I'm saying that 1 out of 20 times, theoretically, you will get a poll that means nothing. And a good pollster will know when he's got a bad poll and will have the courage to throw it out.
But he's got to use his common sense to know if he's got a bad poll.
No question, no question. It's only one part science. There's another part art and another part logistics.
Oh, that's good.
May I interrupt?
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's got strictly to do with the sample size that you take of the population. So I'm wondering, like, what, statistically speaking, what's the confidence level of confidence that you shoot for?
Well, the rule of thumb is something between plus or minus 5 and plus or minus 3. What happens is that you get to that level of tolerance in a nationwide sample after you've interviewed about 1,000 people. To get much better, that you have to interview so many more, and that your increment of accuracy increases so small in comparison to the number of people you have to interview that you don't really worry much past plus or minus 3.
Good. I'm glad you answered that question. I think I understand it. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to, when Mr. Mulroney is talking in Parliament, most of his speech is in French. I wish he would think of the West when he's talking in Parliament.
No, on the other hand, from what I see on the clips, I see remarkably little French, and even on the House of Commons, I don't see him using French as much as I had expected him to.
I think you're right. I think you're right, Jack. I haven't seen much evidence of a pro-French performance on his part at all.
No. How strong is he in Quebec as a popular individual? Very?
Yeah, he's got some real appeal. That we did a poll for our multi-sponsored clients right after the convention, and that it showed not only was Brian Mulroney a popular choice for the Canadian electorate at large, but that his appeal was greatest in central Canada.
Okay, one final question. Is there the slightest possibility, under Mulroney's leadership, in power or out of power, that the party, the caucus, will not eat its leader?
Again, this is the real irony of the leadership convention. They've changed leaders, but they still are a party of opposition. They still are a party of center-right ideology that have to accommodate all those kind of people, and that the only thing that will keep them in line is the prospect of winning. And so in a funny way, to win electorally, Brian Mulroney has to continue to consume himself with the internal workings of the party.
He has an opportunity that Joe Clark didn't have, and that's that the people who were opposed to Mr. Clark, who were very loud in their opposition to him, had also opposed Mr. Stanfield. They were the early supporters of Brian Mulroney.
Well,
and the people who oppose him will undoubtedly bite their tongues and be a little more circumspect.
Any man that can make Sink Stevens the external affairs critic can't be all sensible.
He has a big problem, though, besides all these advantages. The expectations of Brian Mulroney are so high. The expectation that he's going to deliver Quebec on a platter to the Tories is so great that if he fails to do that, or if he fails to produce a majority, he better start looking over his shoulder right away.
Contenders, the Tory Quest for power. Thanks, Allan. One day we'll talk. No, I don't know. I've had enough about polling. And to you too, Patrick. You're going to join the Globe and Mail in the fall.
In January.
Toad and flail. Eh? Best of British luck to you. I'll be back with Webster and the free-for-all after the break. On 2 occasions recently, a mysterious, silent, and generally ugly visitor has come to see me in the mornings. Here's what happened this morning at 10 after 8. What we're starting with? Start with the Vancouver
Remand Center.
Vancouver Pre-Trial Services Center. We want to tease on that.
Yeah.
And then we'll get this pollster in, haven't we?
You want to intro both authors?
Both authors, by name, but not by anything else. It's not you again. Fred Bass in person. Hey, look, I was chewing my cinnamon stick. The Hulk. Hey, listen, what are you up to now? That's one of my favorite cigarettes. If you're any smaller, I'd clout you.
Oh, no.
Thanks very much. January 11th.
What's in the present? What
is this?
I'm not going to open it.
Oh, yes.
This time in the morning. Toothpicks to keep the licorice stick out of my teeth. Guys, nothing if not persistent. It takes strength to stop smoking. Jesus. Okay, let's go back to the lineup. And back we went to the lineup. I'm really getting mad at this fella Bass. You know, he came on here a couple of weeks ago and I gave him my routine promise not to stop smoking but to cut down. Now, I've been trying. I really have been trying. It's very difficult. But I'm down from X packets to X packet. And my wife is not smoking. And I'm doing my best. So I'm willing to have a free-for-all right now. Oh, before I forget, have you got the Black Light Magic Players people on standby? What do I get? In 5, 4, 3, 2. The Black Light Magic people, famous people players, are coming back on the 29th, which is next Tuesday. They are the young, mentally or slightly handicapped people from Toronto. They're appearing at the Queen Elizabeth Playhouse. There are 2 performances. There's one at 5:30 p.m., which I'm going to do the narration on, and one at 8:30 p.m. on which Tony Parsons is going to do the narration on. I don't care which show you go to, but please, if you can afford, go to one of them. And you can get tickets at 2414 Main Street, or better still, you can get them at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre at the door, and I don't see the prices up there. $8, I think it was. $5 for OAPs, and $4 for youngsters. So kindly support the Black Light Magic people at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre on the 29th, which is Tuesday of next week. Now, are there any calls? Where shall I go? Go ahead, please. Hello.
Hello.
How are you this morning?
Jack? Yeah, fine, thanks. You all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I want to know why the price of gasoline on Vancouver Island is 30-some-odd cents a gallon cheaper than what it is over here, and it's not a question of a price war over in Nanaimo. That's just the way it is. And these gas companies over here...
Just a minute. 30 cents a gallon means about 6 cents a litre, doesn't it?
6 or 7, and they're not allowed to have a price war over here. The gas companies got us fixed. The discount companies can't drop their gas over here, and why is it?
Where are you speaking from?
New Westminster.
New Westminster?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I go over there quite often, and it's over 30 cents a gallon cheaper, and I ask them, and they say that's just the way it is. It's not a price war. It's just a steady diet of it.
Vancouver Island's that much cheaper?
Yeah, in Nanaimo.
Well, thanks for telling me. I didn't know before. Go ahead from Nelson.
Yes, my concern is both with the prisons and education. I understand that the government has already allotted $32 million to renovate a prison, and they've cut education $25 million. My question is the government going to cut the kids further in order to repair the newest damage?
Oh, ma'am, which prison are you talking about?
I don't know. On your program during the crisis, you had mentioned that there was $32 million allotted to repair or renovate some prison in B.C. I do not know which one. You did name it, but I didn't get the name.
I have a vague memory of it. It cost $22 million for that new prison services pre-trial center that I showed you this morning. I don't suppose that it's possible to do all things for all people at the same time. But and while I think the social credit priorities are often wrong, the fact remains is that you must carry on with the other affairs of running a country, and prisons is one of them.
But in a priority over and above the education of the children is my complaint.
I know, ma'am, but it's not that simple. I don't think there's any doubt at all that the education system and many of our government services and many of our corporate private things have got very fat at times when money was easy. And money isn't easy anymore.
But not all districts got fat, and those that did not get particularly fat are being cut just as bad as those that were fat.
Ma'am, in the case of the city of Vancouver, some $16 million goes from the taxpayers of Vancouver into grants to other school boards because of its higher revenue for educational purposes. Mm-hmm. And that was an attempt made many, many years ago by a woman called Tilly Rolston, if you can believe it, to try and equalize the standard of education on a pupil-teacher cost, because prior to that, the Vancouver schools were vastly superior and more lavish than those in other parts of the province. And I sympathize with your concerns, especially on special education. The fact of the matter remains that if the government in power wants to allocate its money on its priorities, you're stuck with it till the next election. And I would venture to suggest that no government at this particular moment could whistle unlimited money up to give us back the pupil-teacher ratio you want. I would say it's a problem of a recession at this moment. The philosophical differences between the Liberals and Socialists, social credit, are quite considerable, but the system has gone on really unchanged in many ways for many years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It's the best I can do for you, ma'am. Break, and more calls on a free-for-all, please, to Webster after the break. Yeah, where am I? I can't see. No, I can't see. Oh, yeah, there we are. Williams Lake, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
Yeah, with these teachers going out on strike, I can't see how they can make some teachers make up those extra 3 days when there were teachers that did go to work. And the teachers that did go to work, from what I can gather, the kids didn't learn anything anyways. It was all a lot of playing around in school.
I agree with you entirely, and I think we will have an accommodation whereby the interpretation of Mr. Bennett's words, restoring the services not given during by that time, will be worked out by the school boards. It's the only way to solve it.
Okay, and when it's 30 below degrees up here, Fahrenheit.
You close the schools.
No school.
Right.
You know, so there's teachers down at the coast teaching schools, and there's kids up here not getting schooling.
That's right, when the Queen comes, they can take 30,000 kids and put them into the stadium.
Exactly, right.
And no school.
You don't see anybody being penalized for keeping their kids home sick or taking their kids out for holidays, neither. Also, that $18 million, there's a lot of computers down on the coast on giving education, and we don't have those computers up here. You know, the kids down at the coast are getting maybe a higher education than they are up here. And I think maybe that $18 million could be used for that purpose, along with giving Mr. Bennett his grade 12 education. I think he's underqualified to run this province myself.
That's a good crack, ma'am. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Go ahead, please.
Oh, good morning. I wanted to speak about the riot at Ocala and give you my opinion about what the inmates should have to do in regards to it. I think that they should have to make do with what they have, and if they want something better, they should have to buy their own materials and build it themselves, because I was in Ocala a year ago measuring the entire area for new floor tile, and two things shocked me.
number one, the conditions. They're not as bad as people are saying.
No.
And number two was the view. That is probably the finest piece of real estate in Burnaby. The view of the mountains is absolutely gorgeous. And the quicker they knock that building down and they put that towards some sort of a housing project, I think Burnaby and will get some revenue from that if they sold that, I guess, to builders and strata title it and put up.
The prisoners will suffer, there's no doubt about it. In all previous prison riots, the prisoners generally have had to put up with the lack of the normal facilities. Not all the prisoners are to blame. As you and I well know, maybe 5 or 3 or 2% of troublesome prisoners can get all kinds of guys into trouble, and they're afraid to back off because of reprisals or repercussions later. And we are a civilized society, and we must give people adequate living accommodation, even if they're in jail after a riot. Remember what happened in the BC Pen when they put them in the tents and kept them out there for days and days and days and days? No, I'm with you, but Ocala Prison Farm will not disappear from Burnaby in my time.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Okay,
mind you.
Bye-bye.
That's not that long a time. Come to think of it. In Wyatt's time, in Snyder's time. Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm so sick and tired of people equating more money with better education.
Here, here.
All we have to do is throw money at it and the problem is solved.
Here.
The problem is in the classroom, and Les Bewley's column of Tuesday was his pièce de résistance. It was absolutely number one, and I would recommend it to all of your viewers.
If Bewley wrote a pièce de résistance, it was purely by accident and done by a ghostwriter. Bewley is a little boiling, bubbling pot. That's all he is.
Yes,
Sometimes
but this time he really came through. He really came through, and I recommend this particular. I feel as you do, but I recommend this particular article to you. But on school boards, they are a fourth level of government, which we really don't need. Their duties could be picked up so adequately by a committee of the local municipal council at a huge saving to the municipalities, but more importantly, with a better standard quality of education, so that lady from Prince Rupert who called and said, our children up here don't have the same opportunities that your children down in Vancouver have, wouldn't say that anymore. She'd have the same standard there as we have down here. Let's get on with these examinations and let's get a standard into our system.
Listen, don't tell anybody I said so, but I'm a believer in more centralization in Victoria when it comes to education.
Right
I
on,
am,
Judge.
too.
Right on.
Don't tell anybody I said so. You could run the whole thing by a deputy minister, and it couldn't be any worse.
You and Les Bewley are very much alike.
We are not alike. I'll sue you for that. That miserable little man that he is. Just because he's a judge, he thinks he was God.
Anyway, good talking to you, Judge.
Yeah. Bewley. Thank goodness I had no breakfast this morning. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Yes.
Hi, I'm a prisoner at the Vancouver Pretrial Services Center.
Nice to meet you. I'm sorry I didn't meet you yesterday.
Oh, that's all right. I want to tell you that I watched a report, and it's very concise. I also was just at Ocala until November 1st. The difference between Ocala and here is remarkable. You know, the officers here, for the better part, treat people like human beings. There are some restrictions and regulations, but it goes along with any jail. You know, and I, for one, appreciate the quality of what's given at the Vancouver Pretrial Services Center, without a doubt. Ocala, there's just no way to even describe it. It was just awful.
Listen, I'm very glad you called, and I must say I was impressed. I obviously couldn't show inmates yesterday because you're only accused, but thank you very much for your call.
Thank you.
Much obliged.
Bye.
Right. Mr. whatever your name is. Time? After the break. Talking about Grey Cup tomorrow with Bill Stevenson, Brian Hall, and Jack Matheson, and you know who they are. Also, Ray Perot's replacement will be here, the Honourable Céline Hervieux-Payette, Minister of State for Fitness and Amateur Sport. Webster, 9 a.m. precisely. Webster goes to jail, and so he should, on check at midnight. Grey Cup broadcasters, Stevenson, Hall, and Matheson. Da, 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 da. A trio of Grey Cup talkers. Have I got to name them? A trio of Grey Cup talkers, tomorrow 9 a.m. precisely.